Representative Stone, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, Oliver.
Yeah. Well, the session started. How do you guys feel about it?
What do you think, House?
Yeah, I feel great. I think that we got a great plan, a great roadmap laid out in front of us. You know, obviously one of the, I guess maybe to jump right into it, I think that there's with the property taxes, I know the Senate's already released a bill, and so kind of going through that, and then speaking with Representative Nordman, Chair of Ways and Means in the House, new this year. I think he's still kind of putting things together and just making sure that we hear from everyone and things like that. So, but it was a great first week, great speech by the governor, fantastic, and then followed up with the condition of the judiciary and condition of the National Guard today. So, yeah, I think it was a fantastic first week.
Do you have any clues what that might look like, the property tax bill?
On the House side, I don't. He hasn't said that any specifics or anything like that. Now, I will say that just the guiding talk is, hey, we recognize that just like the Senate, we recognize that there needs to be some change. I think the hardest part about this entire process is, we don't control spending. And so when you don't control spending, then it becomes, something that we do to try to bring property taxes down. But then the taxing entities just continue to spend, right? And so I don't know. There's a lot of things you can do around the fringe. You can without just giving money, right? Without just giving money to buy down levies and things like that. And
and that's what I always try to tell people. It's 50% of your property tax dollar goes to your school system, 30% goes to your city, and then maybe 15 to 20% goes to your county. And it's really the overspending by those entities that causes the issue. So, we're reaching out to our legislators trying to put a halt to it when really it's a problem that's caused by local government, right?
Yeah. And it's complete local control, right? I mean, myself included, right? But we vote for city council. We vote for school board. We vote for county supervisors. So if the state comes in, I mean, if you're into local control, hey, well, now you got the state taking over and control. And I know the Senate has some, a great plan that they put forth. And
so I think what's hard with property taxes is when we're talking about revenue restrictors or some sort of cap, inevitably what you have with that is every time a community has a pothole, they're going to start blaming the state legislature for their potholes. And so I think we have to recognize that this rollback system that we have, it started in the 1970s. And so what that does sometimes, depending on the assessments and the formula, you're shifting the tax burden onto other entities, maybe from residential to commercial in certain situations or whatever. And what I like about the Senate's philosophy that I think will probably gain some traction is that eventually we want to get rid of the rollbacks at some point, but then have kind of a resetting of the levy rates. If you hit instead of having a hard cap at 2%, let's say you hit 2% revenue growth, then the levies will reset. And so then local officials won't be able to hide behind assessments anymore and go out and champion that they cut taxes when they really didn't, and have a more honest conversation with their citizens. We met with the governor, a few of us, yesterday with her proposal. And I think one of the things that I really like with hers is she has a $10 million grant that's going to help incentivize consolidation of services or positions on the local level. And I think every county is a little bit different, but there's certain counties that certainly could maybe bring their auditor position and treasurer position and bring them together. Or, should we have elected positions as recorder, treasurer, and auditor? Should they be appointed positions by the county supervisors? And so there's going to be some controversy with that. But that part of her vision on property taxes, I think she's really onto something with that. And I assume when it's all settled that some form of that's going to remain with her proposal.
So one of the big issues that we saw come over from last year is the eminent domain issue. Where are you guys at on that? I know you guys did some stuff in the House recently. There was a pretty solid divide on it, and that's part of the reason for having a senator and a representative here, to talk about how we bridge that gap and heal that divide a little bit, because you have a lot of work to accomplish this session, and it'll be interesting to see how it gets done. I'm curious how you guys are going to do it.
So yeah, with the pipeline issue, I think from the Senate's perspective, that's the thing that is going to be most interesting as to do we come out of this together and have some sort of comprehensive compromise bill or whatever? Because right now it's pretty obvious that the House's proposal is, and rightly so, it's talking about just carbon pipelines and the use of eminent domain for that. And I appreciate that. I wish that was the conversation that was last year. 639 last year dealt with all hazardous liquid pipelines. It dealt with insurance provisions. It dealt with, IUB being present at different board meetings. And while those are all good conversations to have, it wasn't getting at the heart of the issue of carbon pipelines, which is what brought this issue up. Now, in the Senate this year, you're hearing a lot about widening the corridor, which I think that's part of this equation as well, where a lot of states don't have a corridor where you're limited to a certain area to be able to find voluntary easements and enter into conversations with those landowners. And so I hope that we can join those two ideas together because they're both common sense ideas. I do not think carbon is a public utility. And that is the number one question that I think unites a lot of property rights advocates is what is a public utility, and is carbon a public utility? And I think most people would say that there should be some sort of different standard for carbon versus other utilities. And that's why a couple of years ago, Henry proposed a 90% threshold bill that was also voted on by the Farm Bureau that set a different, higher standard for carbon pipelines in eminent domain than other utilities. And I hope we take a similar approach this year where there certainly needs to be a different standard. What does that standard look like? And we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I know we just did the House study bill, right? So we just got that out of committee in judiciary, and very simple bill, right? One subject line, basically. That's it. And I think that we're pretty much unified in how we view this, the pipeline, and how we view the entire realm of global warming, right? I mean, because that's what it comes down to. It comes down to global warming. Where are we at? We had discussions on aviation fuel, sustainable, and I'm like, well, who sets those numbers? Who sets the numbers for sustainable aviation fuel? The summit engineers were going around the state. They made their way to Garner, which is just below my district there. I live in Forest City, and it's basically the next town down. And there were a number of us, Mark Thompson and Dennis Guth, and we attended this kind of just explanation on, what their next steps are. They got a new CEO and, what they want to do. And I pulled one of their engineers aside and I said, hey, tell me, the ethanol that's produced out of the plant goes in barrel A. Hook up the pipeline and you produce ethanol and it goes into barrel B. Tell me the chemical difference between both of those barrels. None. Exact same quality of ethanol produced. Well, then why can't that be used as sustainable aviation fuel? Well, it can't because it doesn't meet the metrics set. Well, who set those metrics? Right? The Paris Accord, other countries. So now we have other countries telling us what Delta and United, American Airlines can use. It's an arbitrary number set by an arbitrary set of folks that dictate what we do in our country, right? And so I'm not a fan of global warming. I'm not a fan of the 45Q and 45Z tax credits. That's the real driver. I mean, that really is, right? So it is what it is. Those tax credits are out there. Then we come back to Is this for public good? Is this something that needs to, keep going in that fashion and have the protections, or in this case, have the ability to use condemnation procedures? And I say no. And like I said, we're pretty much, I understand from a business standpoint where Summit wants to go with this because the tax credits are out there and this and that. But, private property rights are first and foremost. They supersede a lot of other things. And so don't trample on private property rights. And so I do want to see what comes from the Senate. I know the new majority leader over there said something. They're going to come out with something. Well, and I look forward to seeing that. I just know that ours went through sub. We got it out of the judiciary. I think the vote was 19-2, right? Every Republican voted for it. And so I look forward to seeing what proposal comes out of the Senate and see where they're at with, because I'm sure we talk about widening the corridor, and I could be wrong, but is it going to be as simple as that? I just don't think so. I think there's going to be a little bit more to that bill than just, hey, they can expand their corridor. And so, again, I look forward to seeing that.
I think it's certainly fascinating how the politics has changed with this topic over the last couple of years. I just referred to Henry's bill about the 90% threshold, which everybody thought was a pretty reasonable bill a couple years ago. Well, the politics on this has changed so much to where if that's the bill that you want, you're considered a moderate or a rhino on this issue. Right, and just in 2 years, that's the attitude change. And so I certainly agree that we're moving in the right direction of having a carbon-specific bill, and so I anticipate it should be a more civil conversation than it was last year.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was curious about, because we talked about it a little bit before the interview about some of the backlash and the, you had the quote unquote dauntless dozen that stood up in the Senate and some of the repercussions from that with committee assignments and things like that. Do you think some of that will ease during the session, or, do you think the waters will settle a little bit? Will you guys come to a good agreement?
Well, so I'm a little bit detached from some of that because I'm not on the Commerce Committee, for example. So whatever bill that comes out initially, I'm not going to be a part of that conversation. Yeah. But certainly there's definitely some hurt feelings after what happened last year, and finally we're having a more honest conversation now, I think, about this topic. But as far as the committee assignments go, I think it's a little bit different for each person as to what the reasons might be. But we certainly need to have a humble spirit going into the session if we're going to be successful on something, and put the needs of Iowans before ourselves. And I think if we maintain that type of attitude, a humble attitude, by the end of session, those feelings should heal and we can move forward.
And I don't want to speak for the Senate, but just what they went through last year with their senators, and the Dauntless Dozen, and every time somebody says that, I always think of the movie The Dirty Dozen, but I don't want to call them The Dirty Dozen, right? But that's like the first thing that comes to mind is The Dirty Dozen, right? So, but honestly, as now I'm looking from the outside in. And I have a lot of good friends. Jesse and I have been friends for since we were elected together, and I have a lot of friends over there. Senator Guth used to be my senator, right? I remember when he took me door, and I was like, "What's door knocking? What do you mean? What do you do?" Right? And then he's like, "Well, do you got palm cards?" I'm like, "Well, what's a palm card?" Right? So I have some good friends over there, and I actually have some good friends on both sides of this issue that they dealt with last year. Senator Cranbrink, we get along very well. Senator Buslow, he sat next to me in the House. So, and I know they were, they're on opposite sides of this discussion last year, right? And so, I think as we try to come together, both chambers, on this issue, there needs to be some reconciliation within the Senate themselves, and to bring themselves together. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the discussions in caucus for the Senate looks like, but I think that needs to happen. And because if it doesn't, and they present a bill, then you're still going to have those feelings of, those that don't agree with it or feel like they're not having a say. And then we're just back and forth again, and that divide grows wider. And so I want to see the Senate come together. I want them to unify around this. So then if they present a different bill than we have, then we can have those discussions and everybody feels like they're at the table. Because for so long I feel, and like I said, I don't want to speak for the Senate, but that's just how my view looking in was, that there was always a group, or there was always a piece of that felt like they weren't being heard and their voice wasn't being carried. And maybe I'm overstepping, but that's just kind of how I viewed things from the outside. And I think, Oliver, for us to have this conversation, to move good legislation forward, that needs to happen within the Senate. And then we need to come together, both chambers, to present something that both sides can agree on, and we can protect landowners.
Right. And then of course the other piece of that puzzle is you did not hear the governor talk about it in her convention her condition of the state speech. And so that's going to be the ultimate question, is like, even if we do come to an agreement, it could be such a thing that she rejects any decision we make at the end of session. And how are people going to handle that? So, but at the end of the day, I hope we keep the main thing, and that is do the best that we can with where we do agree on things. And I'm afraid with this internal fighting that sometimes happens that we start losing seats because of it, because you have these odd primaries that are popping up around the states against people who are great public servants and even voted correctly on the pipeline issue that are getting primaries. And all that's going to do is take away funding and resources from the really tough seats that we're going to have to defend in some of the tougher areas. And sadly, I mean, we'll just start losing the majority if we keep this up.
Right. Now, from the outside looking in, is that the kind of thing where, okay, so you have this battle about this pipeline bill or about the eminent domain bill, but then you shelve that to the side and you go work on this other project together that you're all pretty much in agreement on and full steam ahead? Or does it filter into some of the other things that you do?
In a perfect world, you shelve it, you work on this, right? So, being retired military, that's kind of how you got to do it. You got to deal with this issue, but hey, you got to focus on the mission overall, right? So how do we accomplish that mission, right? And I think that, unfortunately, I think some of that stuff is going to bleed over. Just by my, and it's not like I've been in the legislature for 20 years or anything, but in the 5 sessions that I've been a part of, I think there is some crossover where hard feelings, egos, something gets in the way of trying to accomplish the mission.
Right.
And then there's some back and forth, and I get it. One chamber has an idea of how they want things done, the other chamber. But as long as you set aside your ego, as long as you set aside some hard feelings and listen and try to compromise, then you can get somewhere. But if you can't do that, like, it gets in the way. I think, and so that needs to be talked about. It needs to, like I said, you just need to set aside egos. You need to set aside the bitterness and just work together.
Yeah.
And listen to each other.
Yeah. Now, I am curious, have you experienced any beard envy in the Senate? I mean, when people see that somebody can really grow a beard, they're like, oh man, I wish I could.
So when I first ran for office, I was told that a clean-shaven individual will gain 4 points by being clean-shaven. So
you're just testing the theory.
So before I ran for office, I had a beard for like 3 years, and so since I've haven't had a beard for a while. I'm like, I kind of want to go back to that and see what that was like.
How long did it take to get to? I can see you've just trimmed it. I mean, it's thick.
I think I started it like 3 months ago. So
Really, that's insane. He's gonna come up there, Grizzly Adams. You know, I can grow it down here. I just can't grow it up here. I mean, you got.
So you've been an inspiration to my beard growth, but also General Grant. He was 5'8", so he was a short guy, and he had a great beard. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be like General Grant and all over this year. So
it can be intimidating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jesse will tell you because I hadn't seen him. I hadn't seen him. We signed a die, and then he's up in a different district, not close to me, and we don't go to forums together. We don't, other entities come around. They want to meet with everybody, and they're in their little regions and sections. So I haven't seen Jesse. So I saw him, and I was like, boom, all right. Like, he's got a beard. I'm like, and what did I tell? I told you what, like,
shave it off.
Shave it off, right? But I will say this. It was straggly.
Right.
Like, it was like pieces sticking out. So he trimmed it up and manicured it or whatever, and so he it doesn't look bad.
I'm sensing some beard envy here. That's what I'm sensing.
I'm Asian, so I don't have any facial hair. Well, it's hard for me.
Oh man. What are some of the other big things? I mean, everybody has their pet projects. It's like, okay, what are you working on, Representative Stone, besides, property taxes and eminent domain and et cetera? Anything big?
Well, I try to help my caucus out, right? So there's newer members and they've got some great ideas and I just want to support them, So there's some little things here or there. Last year I ran the bill to toughened the obscene material to minors, exposing minors to the pictures and the sexting and all that stuff that's going on. And so I put mandatory minimums on that, created felonies for that. Like, I mean, I couldn't believe that it was only a misdemeanor before, and a serious misdemeanor, not even aggravated misdemeanor. It was serious. And so I was like, this is unreal. The world that we're living in, we have to make tougher consequences, right? So I did that and then sat down and talked with the sheriff's department up there in Winnebago County and local PD, and comes to find out that there's a loophole where someone convicted of sexual exploitation of a minor cannot have their sentence deferred, but they can have it suspended. So we had an individual convicted of a Class B felony, right? You only go to Class A, right? Class B felony, 25 years. The judge suspended his sentence, 5 years probation. Yeah, right? You've got to be kidding me. For sexual exploitation of a minor? Absolutely not. So I'm closing that loophole this year. So I submitted legislation for that. And I'm kind of big on our kids because everything we do, and this is just kind of my general philosophy, and I don't know, I'm getting off topic a little bit here, but my general philosophy is everything that we do for our kids, and in my case, I'm doing for my grandkids, right? Right. So we pass tax cuts. Yes, that puts money back in our pockets. That puts Iowans in a better position. But why? So they can provide for their kids, right? We passed ESAs, right? That gave parents the choice. But for who? For their kids. Like everything we do for the future. And our kids are our future. And so, last year I ran a bill to allow private school students to compete in sports at their public schools, should their private school not have that sport. We ran into an issue once we passed ESAs that, public schools were kind of severing long-standing co-ops, right, for athletics. And And look, adults, get out of the way. You have a problem with another adult, don't take it out on our kids, right? And so we got that through, got it down to the governor's desk. Now I thought that schools would get the hand. And so apparently not, because now I've got to add the word activities to it. Now I got to go back because band is affected, choir is affected, esports is affected. Like, come on, And so a little cleanup, I guess, to that bill. And actually the governor's got her little thing, apparently, that with charter schools can't compete with public schools in sports. And and when she said that in her speech, I was like, wow, we should have just did that last year. Just put it all together, ma'am. Anyway, but yeah. So I'm working on that. I know I worked with ICI, Lindsay Mayer and I. We've had a discussion for a couple of years in regards to blood, right? So, and I'm really, and to this day, I'm still concerned. So my family and I, we've never been vaccinated with the COVID vaccine. If you have, you have. Hey, it's a personal choice, right? Don't force me. Don't take away my right to work because I don't want to get a vaccine, And so I said, well, okay, let's say somebody's vaccinated and then I go in for surgery. Like, do I really want, that person's blood? And so, well, the studies show that what studies? Like, this thing just came out like 5 years ago, and so we're moving into our 6th year. I said, and the problem now, what's happening is there actually is some study work going on that's showing that spike protein is actually showing up in cancer cells as they remove it and they biopsy it, right? And so, do I want that person's blood, in a transfusion? And so I filed a bill, simple. Well, I consider it a simple bill. And ICI, they consider it a simple bill, but just says that I have the option to choose. I have the option to choose what blood goes into my body. And, they already track a number of things, right? Obviously, your blood type and the age. I mean, there's all kinds of information they track. Well, why not add a little blip? I've got the COVID vaccine. I haven't got the COVID vaccine. Right. So
Well, and on that topic, I know last year there was an mRNA bill that was brought forth into the Senate, and it would have, I think, banned mRNA vaccines in Iowa. And I know there's a pledge that's been going around that some legislators have signed. 3 governor candidates have signed. I think Eddie Andrews, Zach Lane, and Brad Sherman have signed it, Senator Carlin, and then some legislators. But it basically states that they would support banning the COVID vaccine in Iowa, and they would say they wouldn't take any money from Big Pharma. I mean, what are your thoughts on going that far when we have a vaccine that by any other standards would have been pulled off the market right away with the injury rates and, the contamination rates and all those things?
Yeah. So I think that, so when I created, because I did write a bill it was 2021, it was my first year, right? So I wrote a bill that said you can't mandate the COVID vaccine for our kids to go to school. I didn't want it put on the child immunization schedule. And so, but I did put a sunset on there because as I was doing the research, what I saw was from the NIH and the CDC that they have a set timeline of how they develop a vaccine, from the initial phase of essentially producing it. I'm simplifying this, producing it, then testing it, and then getting approval, right? So lots of phases in there, but that's basically what it does. And that takes time. Well, to me, yes, you can speed up and rush the development phase, right? And President Trump did that with Operation Warp Speed, right? So that part I can understand you can speed up. The final phase, I can understand you can speed that up too for the approval. But the middle testing phase, when you're injecting it into people and things like that and monitoring that, you cannot speed that up. And so I just used their guidelines and I put a sunset on that, so that there can be time to study this. And so, I don't know. I'm not 100% sure if I'd be on the side of complete banning it. I would venture to say that if you think that it's going to injure yourself, then don't take it, and just let the studies come out. I mean, we still probably have a good 2 to 3 years left in that cycle of testing. And Lord knows, with as much mandatory vaccination policies there were, this is probably one of the largest clinical trials ever in the United States. And with the number of injuries, I think from a federal level, they really need to look at this vaccine and make that determination of, is it safe? Is it truly safe? Is it something that we need to combat the COVID-19? So,
yeah. And, I'm on the Board of Health for Dallas County.
I didn't know that, no?
Yeah. And I was sent something from Lindsay, and it was Polk County's, I believe it's Polk County that's put this, the health department's put this kind of a blanket statement out. They're getting other county health departments to sign on to that basically is going against RFK's the stuff they put together for the new recommended vaccine schedule through the CDC and the federal HHS. I don't understand how that works. I mean, what are your thoughts on that with local governments going against what our new federal guidelines are, or trying to?
So that's kind of more my territory as far as the vaccination issues go. I've always been very sensitive about local governments either lying or like in the school situations, you had schools that are telling their kids and parents that they couldn't go to school if they didn't get all the vaccines. And so we addressed that with some legislation. And sure enough, once we finally got it passed, public health now is sending out false statements, doing the dirty work for the schools, what the schools used to do. And it shed some light on that there needs to be maybe a new structure for governance over public health. You might see that in the property tax conversation. Does every county need to have a county public health? And that might give us an opportunity to address some of these issues of noncompliance with state and federal law. And so that's something to pay attention to this session.
Yeah, for sure. Prior to the conversation, Jesse and I had some time to hang out, and he said one of the things that he would love to talk about was how your faith guided you, Henry, in the House and in the legislature. And I noticed that when we talked about the DEI bill and kind of had our debate in the rotunda, is you always conduct yourself in such a way that builds bridges and tries to get to the heart of the matter. What is that drives you there? And your shirt right there is First Baptist Church, so you're wearing it loud and clear. How does that affect you? How does it affect how you operate?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks for saying that. And so I give a little history. I've never been in the foray of politics, right? I was in the military 22 years, retired Air Force, coached high school football, had the opportunity to coach college football, which brought me to Iowa.
Where at?
So I coached at Waldorf University.
Okay.
Yeah, for 6 years, I was the offense coordinator, quarterbacks coach there. So brought me to Iowa. Didn't know anybody in Iowa. Never been to Iowa. Right. I said, babe, let's go. We're moving to Iowa. And so did that for 6 years, stepped away, started selling RVs there, Winnebago.
Did you like our Airstream in the driveway?
I actually did. I took a picture of it. I'm like, that's awesome.
I'll give you a tour when we leave.
Okay. But I was I'd been to a couple central committee meetings, nothing big and stuff. And so I'd spoken about not legalizing recreational use marijuana. I said, that would be I came from Nevada. I have relatives in Washington State. I know people in Colorado. I'm like, we cannot, because they wanted to get somebody's opinion, and nobody was saying anything. And I'm like, look, we can't have that in our state. And so, that's about it. That was all I had to do with politics. And I knew Ted Gassman, who was my predecessor, and he actually called me up and said, "Hey, Henry, I'm retiring, and do you mind if I come talk to you?" And I was like, "Sure, come on in." I'm like,
and I've told this story. What was happen.
I did it. And I've told this story, like, he's retiring. I sell RVs. This is going to be a good mix. Like, I'm going to sell an RV, make some commission. Right. He comes in, he's like, "Hey, the party's asked me to ask you to run." And I'm like, "Run for what? Like a 5K, a 10K, like a fundraiser, or what do you mean
That's when
run?"
You need Jesse.
Right. So he said, "No, run for my seat." And I was like, "Oh my goodness." And so, I said, I didn't tell him yes, because I was like, I got to go pray about this. Like, this isn't just a willy-nilly decision. You're putting yourself out there, and my strong stances on things don't gel even with some of my colleagues, and so, but I'm convicted. Like, I'm not backing off of these convictions that I have. And so we took it to our pastor. I wanted to make sure that I got some outside counsel, some godly counsel. And so after about a couple weeks, I felt some peace about it. And I called Ted up and said, "Hey, I'll do it." And, we make $25,000 a year, right? And what I was making at that time, I've taken almost a 90% pay cut.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you make that kind of money, you have certain financial obligations. Right. And so, I prayed to the Lord. My wife got down on her hands and knees. We prayed and said, "Hey, Lord, if this is your will, we need some help financially. Like, we got to take care of some things because my salary. Now I'm retired military. I get a pension. Yeah. And so even now we're doing okay." And I will tell you, Oliver, and as God is my witness, you can ask my wife, the Lord brought 2 sales into my life out of nowhere. And if anybody's worked in sales, you can just work and work and work, and it might take months to produce a sale. On the other hand, you can do one fairly quickly, right? But in the world of RVs, sometimes it takes a long time. I sold 2 basically $500,000 motorhomes within a month or 2 of each other. And that was God saying, "Hey, I am opening this door up." One of the other things too that I knew that God had this path for me was one of the very first things that the party, when they came up to talk to me, the House Majority Fund, Jake Heifel, he was with the House Majority Fund. He said, "Henry," he goes, "this is a very red seat. Your election is not the general election. It's actually the primary. So expect a primary, just start knocking doors, June comes, no primary. For an open seat, there was no primary.
Wow.
In my district. I won with like 74% of the vote. Right?
Well, who
this
did they vote
this
for?
past election.
Oh,
right.
At the general.
Yep.
Right.
Yep, at the general.
Right.
And so
that's amazing.
Right. And
where is it you live?
So I live in Forest City, which is Winnebago County. So I have Winnebago County, all of Winnebago County, all of Emmett County, and Kossuth County, which looks like 2 counties. It's like really long. I have about 75% of that. And so
what are some of the other big cities around there?
So you have Forest City and Lake Mills in Winnebago County. You have Algona
Okay.
in Kossuth, and you have
Okay.
Esterville
Okay.
in Emmett. Those are probably the
Okay.
largest ones. And so, as I've gone through this, actually we were just talking about that, a verse that we carry with us. And, for me, Ephesians 4:1, walk in a manner worthy of the calling that you've been called for.
Right.
That's, if you don't, because at the end of the day, my family is there. For me, football's there. I'm a huge football there, right? But my faith has to come first. My belief in God, me honoring God, has to come above all else. It has to come above my wife. It has to come above my kids. It has to come above everything. And so at the end of the day, when we're standing before God, I got to look him in the eye, right? And say, Lord, have I been faithful? I feel that I've been faithful, and then I'll be tested, right? And so,
now where does that come from? Was there a certain point in your life where, a switch flipped, or where you had a meeting with God, and so to speak, or come to Jesus, or that made this so strong for you?
I don't know if there's like a specific. Actually, I was just speaking of First Baptist Church. I just gave my testimony the Wednesday before session started. They asked me to come up and give my testimony in the men's group. So we meet once a month, and different individuals give their testimony. Yeah. So I actually kind of just went through this, but a lot of people. I grew up in a secular household. My mom's Korean. So she was Buddhist.
Sure.
I did walk her down Romans Road. I'm confident in her salvation. So, and my stepfather, he was a non-practicing Catholic. So we never went to church, ever. We weren't even CEOs. We didn't even do Christmas or Easter, and so, but my mom, I'll tell you, it's kind of, You look back in God's hand. She always put me on the Baptist bus when we were in Germany. My stepdad was stationed in Germany, in Mainz. She would put me on the Baptist bus that came around every Sunday, and that's actually how the Lord was introduced to me. And it kind of just grew from there. And, I grew up. So then we moved to Georgia. Grew up kind of in the Southern Baptist Convention, hard preaching, just the old, like on the corner kind of, and then knocking on doors, walking people, leading them through Romans Road to salvation. Did that for a number of years, did that in Japan. And so just that conviction. And again, I think what the Lord has laid on my heart is the conviction for our children.
Right.
Taking care of our children.
Right.
And at first it was just children, but now I'm a grandfather and I've got 6 grandkids. And so now I do it for my grandkids,
How old are you? Oh, never mind. You don't have to answer that. Like, you look pretty young to be a granddad.
Well, I appreciate that. It's the Asian.
Right.
It's Asian.
Jesse, now you guys, or Senator Green, your guys' background couldn't be more different. So you grew up as a farmer, farm family here in Iowa, right?
Yeah, so I'm a 5th-generation farmer, born and raised south of Fort Dodge, and got saved as a child going to a private school.
Okay.
It was during a turbulent time in my family where my sister passed away in a horse accident, and then my grandfather passed away in an airplane crash just the week before that. And during that turbulent time, that private school became kind of like my home away from home, so to speak, and small class sizes. It was about 8 kids a class, 6 to 8 kids a class. And so that really shaped me, both in community service, because they always emphasized you love God, love others. And so how does this work out? And so that shaped me in so many different regards. I graduated in public school for high school because my private school didn't have a high school. And so that brought in a whole new element of different worldviews and how do you defend your faith. And
what was that like, going from a faithful private school to public school?
It was a kind of a shock to the system. I noticed other students that graduated the same class as me They actually did better if they were in larger public schools because they could find that Christian group and stick together. Whereas the small rural high school that I went to, there wasn't as many Christians, so it was kind of hard to find that network. But I did, so that was a struggle for me in some ways. But the positives were like I was challenged with band and athletics in ways that I wasn't challenged before. So I got to see the value of that. And so that shaped my whole school choice perspective that led further on to me running for office. And that was always my number one issue is that every kid should have a choice, and finances shouldn't be that issue. And that was just so fundamental to me. But yeah,
I'm guessing you ran track.
I did not. I did not start running till about 8 years ago.
Really?
And I never dreamt I would love running, and now I do. But the other faith element to that is when I was a kid, I was given the book Pilgrim's Progress, and that to me really shaped my worldview biblically and how to live a life. And in that book, it really pressed on a child or any person of faith about how life is a battle. Life is a one of perseverance and pressing forward. And later on, those principles really hit me in politics, but also I saw the value of that book, and now I teach that to junior high kids in private schools around my area. So right now I'm teaching a class on Fridays up at Fort Dodge to try to do the same thing to those students, just plant those images of that book. It used to be the second most read book in Christian literature, and now very few people read it. So I hope. What
was that called again?
Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan.
Okay, interesting. To check that out.
Mm-hmm.
How are the kids liking it?
Oh, they love it because it's an allegory, and so there's different illustrations of Bunyan's faith that is illustrated in the story of the conviction of sin, salvation, different temptations that come in every Christian's life, and how to handle those things. And those images will never leave a child's mind once they read them.
Have you read Screw Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis? Yeah, that was profound. Mm-hmm. I read that. We used to have a local or a neighborhood book club until COVID, and then people were scared to get together for a certain amount of time. But that was one of the books, and I didn't even realize that he was a Christian, and then I read that book, and I didn't want to read the book. I thought, oh, come on, a neighborhood book club. And I read that book in a day, and I highlighted, underlined, and led the discussion on it. It was so good. And then I had to go back and reread The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe through the eyes of C.S. Lewis had become a saved, born-again Christian or whatever, thanks to J.R.R. Tolkien, right? But then you could see all the themes in the Chronicles of Narnia that, the resurrection and the sacrifice and all that stuff. That was interesting. Yeah.
So yeah, with Henry and I though going back to the issue of faith, that even though we came from such different backgrounds, ultimately that's what drove us to
couldn't
serving.
Be different, more different.
That's what drove us to public service and our love for people.
When was the moment that you decided to run for office?
So in about it was right in the middle of COVID. I was the last person to get in my race. It was a 4-way primary that I was a part of, and my county supervisor. He suggested that I think about it. He thought I would be a good fit for my district. He thought I could win, and I remember after he said that I couldn't sleep for like a week because I knew it would be a once in a lifetime opportunity. My former senator served for 24 years.
Really?
And so ultimately, at the end of that week, I knew if I didn't run, I would regret it. Even if I lost, I just knew if I didn't give us a 110% shot, I would regret it at the end of my life. And the other factor is because of the school choice issue, I felt that was the number one issue facing Iowa. And I was just a perfect example of the positive aspects of school choice, and I could articulate it. And so that's what propelled me to run.
Interesting. So with this conversation or this talk of faith, I know, you went to Israel recently, and as the chair of the Dallas County Republican Party, I've tried to bring more of our legislators' posts into our group, to highlight the things that our legislators are doing. And Senator Green has some of our county. And I cross-posted your, meeting with Netanyahu and some of your trip. And there was, and we talked about this, there were some negative comments. And I just wanted to ask you about the trip, the gist of it. And Jesse had said that you had gone previously. What was it about? What was it like? What did you get from it? Can you kind of explain the whole thing? I mean, if that makes sense.
I was part of a 13-member delegation of Midwest legislators that went on this trip. It was bipartisan as well. So there was a couple of Democrats from Minnesota who happened to be Jewish that went. And so traveling with them, such completely different backgrounds and political philosophy and stuff like that was really interesting to be a part of that. But as soon as we got off the plane, we went to the hotel in Jerusalem. And that evening, there happened to be all the ambassadors from Israel that go to other countries happened to be staying at that hotel. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, gave a speech to them that night. When he heard that our delegation was in the hotel, he wanted to meet us. And
sure.
And so it was just fascinating to get off the airplane and then literally be welcomed by the prime minister. And so that was a moment I'll never forget. But the whole purpose of the trip was, one, to share their perspective about what they go through on a day-to-day basis that we might not realize. The other aspect was to show us the innovation that takes place in Israel and how there's such a vital economic asset for the world, but such a vital economic partner for us. A lot of our agriculture and military innovation comes from their research and development. And then the other aspect was October 7th, what happened on that day and the truth behind that. And it was one of the most sad things that I've ever seen and been a part of, to see like exactly how horrific that was. And also the importance of rights, the importance to be able to have the right to protect yourself. So like right in Israel, they have such restrictive gun laws that I actually walked away in some sense a little bit angry, because there shouldn't have been as many deaths as there were if everybody was able to protect themselves. But it also gave me a greater appreciation for what we have in America. We have a Constitution. We have a Second Amendment that says I have an inherent right to protect myself. And in Israel, they don't have that. So it really helped shape my view on that. But as far as the purposes of the trip, those were the three aspects: was to get a feel for their government, to get a understanding of their technology and innovation, and then also really understand the evil that happened on October 7th.
What did you get a chance to, walk in the footsteps of Jesus or tour some of the holy sites and things like that?
I definitely need to go back again to view some more of the holy sites and what we as Christians think about there. The trip that we went on was more from a Jewish perspective and a political perspective. But we did get to spend one day viewing some holy sites. And I didn't realize how close and compact everything is in Jerusalem. So I'll never forget standing on top of a building and looking at the Mount of Olives, and how close that was to the Dome of the Rock and the Wailing Wall. Off to your left is Garden of Gethsemane, and then looking down off this building, you could see the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and everything was just right there in one picture frame.
Wow! And
so when you're reading the Bible, like I never pictured that.
I thought they were farther apart.
Yep, and it's just literally all right there.
Did you get a feeling from it? Was there a holy feeling of
it? It really hit me about how Jesus is the author and perfecter of our faith, and he's the one true Lord and Savior. Like, it just hit me that, how blessed we are to know the truth of the gospel, and looking down at the Wailing Wall, like I almost was conflicted. Should I go down there and pray at the Wailing Wall? Because I don't want to be a stumbling block to some of my Jewish friends and stuff like that. But I ended up writing down 3 prayers: prayer for the state of Iowa, prayer for my family, and then prayer for my church. And I put that into the wall and said a quick 10-second
awesome.
prayer and left. But we have such a different perspective about the world than what others have, and we need to treasure that because it's so many other people are deceived to the truth and the power of the gospel.
Now, would you have any answer to like the criticisms for, how much support we give Israel, how many billions of dollars, and then both sides of that conflict and all those issues?
Sure. Democracy and freedom is precious, and we need to treasure it wherever we find it in the world. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. They're the only ones that understand what the concept of equality before the law. In the Muslim world and in India, for example, the concept of equality before the law is just so foreign to them. If you're born into a caste system, you're just stuck there for the rest of your life, and it's so foreign to us. And so in Israel, they truly have similar values with us, and we receive so much through that partnership. Like I said, the innovation, the military intelligence, and when you compare it to what we've given to Ukraine, it's just apples and oranges. Like I still don't understand why we're involved in Ukraine. They're not a member of NATO for a reason. They're not historically trusted, but yet we've given them hundreds of billions of dollars. And in Israel, I think on average, correct me if I'm wrong, Henry, I think we gave them like $3 billion a year ago, or it's somewhere to $3 to $9 billion is what we give them on a yearly basis, and we receive so much more on that investment than what we give.
Interesting.
If we lose Israel, they are the appetizer, we are the entree. So that was something that Benjamin Netanyahu talked about when he's met with us. Is we're in the same fight that you guys are in. So.
Interesting. What about you?
Yeah. So previously we went, I was part of a delegation. There were 6 of us from the state of Iowa, but there were 250 legislators. All 50 states were represented on this delegation that went to Israel. We weren't that fortunate. Netanyahu did come give us a speech and it said basically the same things. And, we met with Mike Huckabee. We met with President Herzog. We basically did the same thing, Church of Sepulchre. And we, went to Old Jerusalem, Mount of Olives. I mean, ours was structured as well. Like every day they already had it planned out. We planted a tree for Iowa over there. The tree of life is big over there in Israel. And so we planted a tree to represent the union between Iowa and Israel. And there were 50 trees. There was a whole row. And, as some legislator goes in 10 years, they're going to be able to see the tree that Iowa represents Iowa there. So I was very honored, very blessed to go on that. And getting back to kind of your question. So I think you look at things from a fiscal standpoint of where our nation is. Again, what are we leaving our kids? What are we leaving our kids? What are we leaving our great grandkids, right? This debt, this deficit, and so I agree. We do need to provide, especially for a nation like Israel. But I'm of the different mindset, and maybe I don't know the whole picture, but we have got to stop giving money away. You want money, we'll provide money for you, but it's all going to be in loans. It's all going to be, you're going to pay us back, right? Now, what does that look like? Are we talking an actual repayment? Are there natural resources that you're going to pay us back with? Minerals, oil, things like that. That's obviously up to the president and that's up to Congress to kind of work that issue out, right? But we should be done giving money away. We do need to prioritize who gets that money, though. Israel is absolutely at the top of that list. I think that bond, because we sit here in a room of politics and making laws and this and that, but we need to remember those are God's people, right? Our nation is blessed with a constitution. It's the greatest man-made document ever, right? The greatest document is the Bible, but the greatest man-made document is our Constitution. Nobody has anything like it, and that's what has helped shape our country. But God's hand on our country has kept us secure and allowed us to flourish, and we can't ever forget that. And so I think that as we move forward, those and I can only imagine we have these hard budget discussions here at the Capitol, and and it's Iowa. I can only imagine what those budget discussions look like in Washington, D.C.
Right.
But I will tell you this: there needs to be a change. There needs to be a change on how you deal with the money that Americans give you through taxes to provide for our nation, and what that looks like. I understand we have a responsibility to keep the peace overseas, to understand we need strategic footholds from a military standpoint all around the world. But again, we can't do it by harming our own nation and creating and going into more debt. We've got to stop that. So that's kind of my perspective. It might be narrow-sighted, might be short-sighted, but that's how I feel. That's what I believe.
Sure.
Well, there's definitely a tension you see within the Republican Party of America first or America only. There's a difference between those two worldviews and concepts when it comes to foreign policy. And I think we can all agree that Trump's foreign policy so far has been pretty amazing.
Right.
And so I'm going to trust, Huckabee is over there as the ambassador. I think a lot of what's happening is because of him and his love for Israel. But I think within that Republican Party with America First and America Only, I think part of it is religious and faith-based. Some of the hate or whatever that comes from the right, I was really shocked at some of the negative responses. That came from
me
the
too.
right.
I mean, I know there's a lot of, there are two sides to the story. Any type of war or injury or brutality is not okay on any side of any conflict, in my opinion. But I was surprised too.
Yeah, so that took me back. That I would say it was 2-1. Some of the negativity that came from the right versus the left.
Yeah,
and so I've been still trying to process that out, exactly where it's coming from. But I certainly think it's a spiritual element as well to that, but also a lack of understanding of just how precious democracy is. And it is precious, and I think there is some responsibility for us to protect that around the globe, whatever that looks like. Now, America First concept to me is like, to Henry said, what are we getting in return for this? And we are certainly getting a return from Israel with our partnership.
And what is that return?
Military insight, some information, technological advances in medical community and the ag community. That's just scratching the surface. And I'm very confident that we're getting more than we're sending out.
And Jesse brought up a really good point, and I don't want us to gloss over this. And you actually alluded to it. So with the vitriol that comes from a simple post of what Jesse had made.
Right. Who wouldn't shake Netanyahu's hand if they got off the plane and he was there? Would you do this? I mean, it's like the prime minister wants to greet you. I mean, regardless of what your opinions are about certain situations. Yep. I mean, you're a delegate of Iowa. You're going to be there and say, "Wow, this is great. I get to meet the prime minister."
Yeah. Right? And when we look at we could talk about, there's two sides to every story, and war is bad and whatnot, and I get that. And we can sit back and for the vast majority of Iowans, for the vast majority of Americans, they did that. What happened on October 7th was a news story, and the numbers were numbers, right? But when you're there at the festival site and you see all these stanchions of everybody that was murdered there, as you walk through the kibbutzes and you see the damage and the atrocities that happen there, let me tell you, Oliver, it brings a different context to that conversation, right? And wherever you're at, whether you're on Israel's side or you're on, Lord forbid, you're on Hamas's side or the Palestinian side, there are a group of people that will never acknowledge that Israel was attacked and that should not have happened.
Right.
Well, they were attacked because they've oppressed Palestine for so long. Like, they will excuse that. They will excuse those actions on October 7th until the day that they die. And it's so easy because you live in this great nation and the freedoms that we have to sit back and make a statement like that.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, and Jesse knows this because he's been there, and I'm not saying that there aren't other people that are sympathetic, but when you go there and you see those and you see faces and names of all those people that are slaughtered, a whole different perspective on what went on over there.
Yeah. That very day, I was scheduled to interview Governor Doug Burgum, who's now the Secretary of the Interior. And, I had all my questions laid out and everything. And then that happened. And we had a totally different conversation because that was the topic of the day. It had happened that morning. So that's difficult. And moving on from there, we have a governor's race here in Iowa, right? And it's contentious. We've got, a 5-way primary for the Republican ticket. What are your thoughts on that? I mean,
to me, it's going to be fascinating how this plays out, but I know what voters are looking for, and I think Henry would agree with me on this. When a voter is assessing a candidate and who to vote for in a primary, they're looking for two things. One is authenticity, and another is are they competent? Those are the two factors that they're sorting through.
Right.
I don't think it's going to surprise us as to eventually who the front runners are in this contest. And I just hope that, a lot of people are worried about Rob Sand, and he is somebody to be concerned about. But so far we've been infighting in a healthy fight, having a healthy fight. We've yet to spend any resources or time worrying about Rob yet, and that time is going to come. And so for him to only lead by 2% at this time in some of these polls that supposedly are out there, I think is actually I look at as a positive because he's a liberal, and we're going to call it out, and we're going to expose it eventually.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this primary. I think
You mean he doesn't always drive around a pickup truck with a shotgun in the back eating pizza?
And guess what? He's actually a big spender. I mean, he just gave out his proposed budget, and supposedly it's 70% increase is what he's wanting within his auditor's budget.
Really?
So if that's any predictor of how he's going to govern it in the state of Iowa, we're going to be in trouble fiscally. So that time will come. But I think we're having a healthy fight within the Republican Party, and I'm excited to see what happens.
We have a lot of good people in the primary. Yeah.
I think that Jesse said it, perfect. That to be authentic, to be competent, like that's, as Republicans, that's what we look for. I think that as the primary shapes up, more and more of that will be whittled away, right? So, it's early, it's January. For all we know, people could bow out come March, right? Filing date,
right.
So that's something that's always been healthy for our party, and I think that needs to continue to happen, right? Here's one thing though that I think escapes a lot of people, and just I only say that because I've actually heard it in separate conversations, around central committee meetings and things like that. Hy-Vee people stop me, and people will say, "Hey, well, even if Rob Sand." Oh, and let me back this up a little bit. So when I say, when people say, right, if you win 72% of the vote in a district, right, you're talking to Republicans, right. So these are Republicans talking to me, right? Okay. So when they say, well, even if Rob Sand wins, there's no way we're losing the House and the Senate. And I say, so you guys will protect us. And I say, okay. I said, while that might be true, that we're not going to lose the House, we're not going to lose the Senate, there's going to be some tough races, both sides, both chambers, right? We're going to have some tough races. We're going to have to defend some tough positions. What people don't see and don't realize is that while we can do everything we can do to keep Rob Sand, Lord forbid, he's governor, in check, if he is governor, he's going to now insert his own department directors. He's going to insert the people in the Department of Education. He's going to insert his person in the Department of Revenue. He's going to insert his person in the Department of Management. He's going to insert his person in the Department of Administrative Services. He's going to insert his person in the Department of Transportation. And what's going to happen behind the scenes? What's going to happen to all the rules and policies and guidelines that don't come through the legislature? Who's going to be driving that agenda? Is it going to be Republicans or is it going to be Democrats? Right? So all these rules, and we'll sit here and we'll talk about the Somalian community and what's happened up in Minneapolis and the Leary Center. We'll make jokes about all that, right? But all that is done through policy. It's done through bureaucracy, right? The bureaucracy allows that. All the legislature does is fund it. We're just going to continue to fund it. But those policies that drive things like that have happened under Democrat watch. That is the reason why we can't have a Democrat governor in the state of Iowa. Because everything that we've done, all that we've worked hard to do, all the policies, all the hard votes, all the stances we've taken are going to be undone. And what they can undo in a few short years, it takes multitude of years to reel all that back in, right? I mean, a lot of people have short memories. And that's one thing that, you hear a lot in the political circles is, voters have short memories, right? Well, a lot of people have forgotten what happened in 2010 when Democrats were in control. And there was a 10% budget cut across the board halfway through the fiscal year. They fired teachers, right? They made budget cuts because they had overspent. Now the Democrats will say, well, that was because of this and that was because of that. Well, we went through COVID. There were some major things that happened when Republicans were in control. And yet we made the hard decisions. We made the tough decisions, the tough budget decisions to keep our state on track, to keep our state moving forward. So now we're in a season of, it's a major election year for, an unknown person running for governor. So what does that look like? And I will tell you, and I've said this, so I'm going to say it on your show, right? The worst Republican is better than the best Democrat. I don't care. That my stepfather told me that, right? Right. And that's kind of how I've kind of lived my life, is like, Republicans, we're always thinking about protection. We're going to protect our state. We're going to protect our kids. We're going to protect. That's what we do. And that's what we want to continue to happen. And that's why I don't care what it takes. Like we need to get people out to vote, and we need to not rest on the laurels of what happened in 24 and then riding the Trump wave and da-da-da.
Yeah, that's a huge concern.
Yes.
And I want to real quick, when you talk about budget, I mean, you hear the Democrats saying the sky is falling, like we're where our budget's in crisis and all this stuff, but we have like this huge surplus. Can you speak to that at all, or either of you?
So the main thing to remember is that the tax cuts are fully implemented. And so naturally with the tax cut, you're going to have less revenue that's coming in. And then also ESAs are fully implemented now, which was our biggest cost driver on the expense side. So now that those two things are done, I expect this year the big thing is going to be some of the Medicaid changes. And so we have to budget around that a little bit. But after this budget cycle, I think things are going to be more stable. And of course, the farm economy right now isn't doing very well. And so let's say that comes up a little bit more, we're going to start running into surpluses again. But we have all of our reserves are full. We just started dipping into them, and guess what? The Taxpayer Relief Fund was designed for taxpayer relief,
Right.
and
right.
so a lot of this was by design. But
So what are the numbers on that? I mean, I heard we had like a $4 billion surplus. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we have $4 billion in the Taxpayer Relief Fund. We have $2 billion in the carryovers, and so we're in financially we're in a much better state than some of these other states.
Did we
around
ever
us.
have a $6 billion surplus under Democratic governorship?
When they left, it was a $1 billion deficit with that. But so we just need to continue being careful.
Right.
Just having an attitude of restraint.
Sure.
And so education funding is going to be the first thing that we talk about here within a week or two. So one thing to keep in mind with education funding is ESAs are set in accordance with whatever our percent increase is with SSA. And so you could see a conversation where maybe we should have 1.5 or 2% SSA, low SSA, but then try to fund public education in other ways like categoricals, loosening up that, or teacher loan forgiveness programs and transportation equity. There's so many other ways that we can fund education than just state supplemental aid. And so I think in the years going forward, you're going to see an effort to try to keep that SSA number as low as possible because ESAs are connected to it now. And we want to have an attitude of restraint when it comes to all spending. And so that's kind of complicated the spending conversation a little bit on the education side. But
yeah, we were talking about that because there was a pay increase for teachers, and then how that was funded, and then some of the potential challenges versus some of the solutions that you were working on.
Sure, we now have the 6th highest teacher pay in the nation, and so that was one way to help rural Iowa because rural Iowa teachers do not have as high of starting teacher pay than urban districts. But yes, there was some compaction that was caused that created maybe some extra expenses for the local government or local schools to take care of those teachers that have been there for 4, 5, 6 years that were maybe upset that a starting teacher was getting as much as they were. So there were some tough conversations that had to be made by local governments to satisfy some of those teachers that have been there. But certainly there was some extra state funds that went in to help get those starting teachers the pay that they needed to attract them. And then in my budget in particular, I chair the education budget. Teacher loan repayment programs, that's a very cheap way to encourage teachers to come to Iowa and get them into the profession as quickly as possible. Rob Sand says that we have a 500 teacher shortage in Iowa. And while you do the math on that, we have 320 public school districts. And so that's really not that bad of a number. We can overcome that. And so this year within my budget, I'm going to do a continued focus on those loan repayment programs.
Do you see any alternate teacher licensure legislation coming through at all to help with some of the, getting more teachers?
I haven't heard of anything in the Senate, but there's been some last couple of years we've done some stuff with licensure.
Yeah, we've done some alternative teacher licensure bills. I can't specifically recall. I thought they made it through the Senate. So we have taken some steps on that to help alleviate some of those longer paths, to try to get in to help the teacher shortage, that we're experiencing. But I think there was an article or something that said we're 99% of all teacher positions in Iowa have already been filled. at record levels. I mean, in record time. And so, yes, we need to be concerned about, again, our kids. Public school kids are our kids too. I have nothing against public school kids. Our own kids, our own children. We homeschooled our kids. They went to public school. They went to Department of Defense schools, and they went to private schools. So, our own personal children have run the gambit. And so we need to look out for all kids. And what does that look like? So yeah, we do need to take care of them. There is a myriad of different ways than to just keep throwing money at it. Yes, money's a vital component, but there's other things that we can do to get our state back on track and to teach our kids, to teach them history, to teach them English, to teach them composition, to teach them math. And not politicize the classroom. So I think that's a huge thing to do as our state moves forward.
Conceptually, the biggest thing that drives me going forward with education is that we have still the current way of educating a child that was created 125 years ago. I mean, who would dream that in 125 years we haven't changed the model of one teacher in front of 20 kids? And school choice, to me, is one, respecting the values of every parent, whether they want a faith-based education or whatever, but it also drives an incentive for private innovation. And innovation always comes from the private sector, and you're going to see that in Texas in the next couple of years, where they're going to have 100 new AI schools come up in the next couple of years. And I anticipate them coming to Iowa eventually to take advantage of our school choice programs and bring that innovation to Iowa.
Yeah, that'll be interesting how AI is going to affect our education. I mean, and I've seen that some rural schools that have closed open enrollment in the past are now trying to open it to take advantage of the ESAs, because there are a lot of rural schools that have closed enrollment, and they like I said, they're trying to open it up and bring more kids in, because sometimes parents want to send their kids to a smaller school, not necessarily a private school, but another public school.
Mm. Yeah, some public schools are becoming charter schools. Last year, I think you had about 10 new public charter schools. And then, of course, I think you're getting a lot in my district. I've got a couple new private schools where there's a large homeschool population, and they're looking to maybe change their model a little bit. And it's that innovation is happening, and it's just going to continue to happen when you empower parents. But a lot of people forget open enrollment is a new concept, not a new concept, but new in Iowa, where in 1993, before that, homeschooling was illegal. Like a lot of people can't fathom that it was illegal.
Yeah.
In 1993, it was the first year for open enrollment.
That's insane.
Democrats fought us tooth and nail on that, but now that's proven to be beneficial. And then, so we have roughly about 35,000 homeschool family or students, about 42,000 private schools students, and then 500,000 public school students. And I anticipate in the future that 35,000 homeschool population is going to take advantage of these ESAs.
Will they be able to do it without? Sometimes I think that the homeschool folks don't want to have the government involved in their education at all, and I know there's probably some guidelines or things attached to that money, isn't there? Or is it going to be something they can actually utilize without that concern? So
right now it's just for accredited schools.
Right.
And so homeschool families right now have a small tax credit they can take advantage of.
Okay.
And I think in the future, like you said, the homeschool community is divided right now, whether or not they want government assistance. So as long as we have income tax, in Iowa, we can still continue to have those tax credit conversations. But in my opinion, if you are proving that you are educating your child, so like if you're a certified public CPI homeschool student, I believe you should get a share of those ESA dollars, because you're proving that you're educating your child, and that is a value to the state of Iowa. And I would like to give some back to that. But as long as the homeschool community is divided on that issue, I'm just not going to worry too much about it. But I just think there's going to be more small private schools that are going to continue to bubble up in Iowa.
Yeah. And Iowa's unique, right? We have an IPI, independent private instruction, right? We have CPI, competent private instruction. And so I'm with Jesse. Like, I believe that as long as there's some rules, there's some guidelines, which is what CPI, homeschool, falls under that category, right? And you should have at least the ability to take part in the ESA program, right? Again, that's school choice, right? I mean, these parents want to educate their children on their own, and they, you have classical conversations, you have little pods that, that they go to or whatnot, and all that's reported, and, you do take tests, then you should be able to take part in the ESA program. And then the other conversation is, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Well, that's fine. That's okay. So then with IPI, you're not able to take part in the ESA program. And so that's choice, right? You can go the competent private instruction route, homeschool route, and have a little accountability, and you partake, but you don't. And so I remember my first year, Representative Wheeler and I, we actually had CPI in our universal school choice bill that we had proposed. Didn't go anywhere, it is what it is. And there's other advocates down there that are homeschool advocates that say, let's give it to CPI, but not IPI, because those are the rules. And so, again, it's school choice, and we're talking about our kids. We're talking about educating our kids, and as adults, we just need to get out of the way. We need to get out of it that way. We got squabbles between adults. Let's keep it at this level. Don't force those squabbles onto our kids.
Exactly. Yeah. So before we wrap up, is there anything, Senator Green, that you'd like to touch on or leave people with or tell people to look out for?
The one thing that's been on my mind the last year, and since I've been in office, is, when you're outside of politics or you have this preconceived notion that government is bad and politics is bad and the lobby is bad and, the swamp.
We hear that a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for Washington. I'm guessing it is a lot of bad out there, but who knows? But I'll never forget my experience coming into the Capitol, being really nervous about what am I getting myself into here. And it has become so clear to me that, the place runs on integrity and the currency of trust, and the right people rise up in leadership positions. That's how Henry became whip within 2 years. I mean, he showed his capabilities and his intelligence and his trustworthiness and his care for his colleagues. And so I wish people would see that we have a great system. The Republican Party is not perfect, but we've delivered so much, and it's because of selflessness. It's because of teamwork, and I'm really proud of being an Iowan. I'm proud to be able to serve, and we have a great system of government, and I just wish there was more appreciation for that within our base and some of the squabbles that we have within our party.
Yeah, the closer I've gotten to it, the more appreciative I am. I mean, the sacrifice you guys make, and it's like you said, $25,000 a year, and that 4 months creeps into 8, 10, 12 months pretty easy.
Absolutely.
And so it is a sacrifice. So I do hope more people see that, and I'd like to convey that through these conversations, is that you guys are working hard, sacrificing, trying to do the right things for Iowans. Yeah.
Yeah. So and this is not to kind of put on a tinfoil hat, right? But I believe that, though, what I've learned getting into this is words matter, right? How we describe things, how we think about things, right? And so I've kind of really, and my wife's going to watch this and listen to this podcast. She's going to say, oh my goodness, I can't believe you did that. So Oliver, right? Jesse, I just, this is going to be a rhetorical, but it's going to be a little session, right? So when I make this statement, I just want you to envision something in your mind based on the statement that I'm going to make.
Okay.
Right. And that statement is, I want to live in a democratic society. Okay. You probably have a vision in your head, right? Okay.
Right.
Now, I want to live in a Democrat society. I would venture to say, you don't have to answer, but I would venture to say you thought of something completely different.
Right.
Those two, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that what's happening is if you go online and you Google major parties in the United States, major political parties, you won't find the Democrat Party. You will find the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, right? If you go to Wikipedia, we have never elected a Democrat president. We've only elected Democratic presidents, governors, representatives, senators, state senators. Everything is Democratic. There is a certain connotation in people's minds when they come across those two words. When you say the word democratic, it gives you a feeling of that's who we are. Like you almost get a sense of pride with that, right? But when you say Democrat, people have a different vision of that. Now, I'm not saying there's a cabal out there that's trying to change people, but it is strange. And you can Google this on your own.
Right,
you don't have
right.
to take my word for it, right? You can go look this up. It is unreal how many times the Democrat Party is labeled as the Democratic Party, or the Democrat candidate is labeled as the Democratic candidate. I've never heard anybody say the Republican candidate or the
Right.
Republican Party. Why do we call Democrats Democratic? Right? I think there's a mindset to try to change people's view of the Democrat Party. Now, again, maybe that's me putting on my tinfoil hat, but I think words matter. And so every time I talk about a Democrat, they're not democratic in my opinion. And that's not how I describe them. It's not the Democratic Party. It's not a Democratic candidate. It's always a Democrat candidate, a Democrat Party. Accept who you are. Don't try to change that.
Right.
Don't try to soften your party and the view of your party in this nation. And again, and tell your listeners and your viewers, Google it themselves. You don't have to take my word. Go out there. So I guess I'll leave you with that. A little bit of a tinfoil hat plug there.
I don't think it's tinfoil, man. I think that the Democrat Party, the thing they do best is obfuscate the truth through words. So what do you get when you hear gender affirming care versus mutilation and medicalization?
Absolutely.
I mean, those two, just the relabel makes it sound abhorrent what Republicans are doing, but if you're saving a kid from being mutilated and medicalized, you're a hero. But if you're, denying them of life-saving, gender-affirming care, well, geez, you're terrible.
Yeah.
But so that resonates with me.
Okay. All right.
For sure. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. It's been great, and I hope we can do it again sometime for sure.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Yeah. God bless
Thanks,
you.
Oliver.
Yeah, we'll see
God
you
bless.
next time. This episode is sponsored by the Gorilla Cover, the strongest window well covers on the market. Family and veteran owned, these covers are custom made and built tough right here in Winterset, Iowa. Made from ultra-strong UV-treated polycarbonate with aluminum hinges, Gorilla Covers protect your home from water, debris, and accidents. And they look great too. Stop settling for flimsy plastic that yellows and rattles. Call 515-462-2170 or visit thegorillacover.com today to get your free estimate. Built American tough. Built Gorilla strong.
Bye.